Hey guys, Kush here, back with another video, and in today's video you might be wondering why is this video in a vertical format. Well, that's because today's video is about tips and tricks that I've learned shooting vertically for over 2 years right now. So let's get started. At the moment, most of the content that we're consuming on social media and for advertisements are on Instagram and Facebook for our phones. And what position do we use our phone in? This position, the vertical position. So that's why most of what we shoot right now for online content is targeted to people watching it on a vertical orientation. So that's why we should also be upgrading ourselves shooting vertically. And today I'm going to be giving you 5 tips for shooting vertical video. Tip number 1, getting the gear right. So when we usually shoot videos, this is how we hold our cameras, right? Even when we mount it on a gimbal, we mount it like this. So if we want to shoot horizontally for platforms like Facebook and Instagram and not crop in post, which we would lose our original composition, as well as the quality would be decreased since we are cropping into the image. So instead, basically we can either hold our camera like this, obviously, or otherwise if we want to get smoother results, we can use an L bracket and mount that onto a gimbal. For these shots right here, I used a vertical plate on my gimbal so I can get a more smoother results while shooting vertically. So second, I want to talk about composition. In this, the key rule of thirds still do apply, placing the subjects on one of the intersecting lines. But one thing we need to keep in mind is, since we are now shooting vertically, we have more real estate on the top and bottom rather than it being on our side. So we need to keep this in mind when distancing ourselves from our subject. Otherwise, if we're using a lens too wide, it could either distort our subject a little too much from the top or bottom, or it might make our subject super small in the middle. So you'll need to keep such things in mind when shooting vertically, which goes hand in hand with my next tip. My third tip is about lens selection. So as I said before, we have more space on the top and bottom when we're shooting vertically. So if we use a super wide lens, like somewhere around 15 to 20, it will exaggerate our subject a lot and cause some weird bowing, making him super big on the top or on the bottom. So instead, I prefer to use a more close to life focal lens like 50 and 35, which is what we use mainly to shoot the sequence that you saw in the initial part of the video. Since 50 is the closest to real life and 35 is a little wider to get more of the surroundings, but not too wide to distort our subject too much. Since we do have to keep in mind the plane of field is going to be on the top and bottom mainly. Alright, the next 3 tips I have for you has to do with editing mainly. So first would be aspect ratio. So you should know what video you're creating, which medium will it be on. Would it be on stories or post? Because for example, if we post it on stories, it will be 1080p by 1920, which is by the 9:16 aspect ratio. Or if we're posting it, if we're uploading it as a post, it will be 1080p by 1350, which is a 4:5 aspect ratio. So if we are aware of those facts beforehand, we can adjust our video in post-production to make sure we get the best result out there. For example, if we export a video in 9:16 aspect ratio, but it is posted in a 4:5 aspect ratio, a lot of key elements might be cut from the top and bottom. If we knew that beforehand, we could have cropped and adjusted our image in such a way that it wouldn't have been cropped. Another way of doing this, if we do shoot horizontally and want to post vertically, take that image on a vertical sequence and scale it down all the way until it's fully visible, then duplicate that clip below it and scale it up and blur it out a bit, like you just saw in the sequence I showed you. So this could be another way you can take advantage of a vertical medium while still shooting horizontally, if you don't want to scale in and lose quality but still post it in that format. So my 5th tip, split screening. Like in the sequence you saw before, we layered 3 clips one below the other to sort of show different angles of the same movement but in a different perspective, as to exaggerate more what is happening at the same time. And my last tip would be to do with text. Since we have all this room at the top and bottom, we can add any text we want without disrupting the main subject that's in the middle. So we can add a text on the top or bottom of what's happening at a certain point, or something that would be complementing to the video.